So this tutorial is going to show you how to edit a white area using an adjustment level and how to preserve the subtle shadows underneath without eliminating them. As you can see that we have some nice shadow and reflection occurring all around this little doozy of a watch here, which creates a nice sense of environment. We wouldn't want to eliminate that and create a time-consuming process where we're using the lasso tools to crop out the watch, and what we'll end up doing when we do that is we'll lose our nice sense of edges right here, this sort of organic feel that we have, as well as lose this nice little shadow underneath, which once again creates a decent sense of environment. So we'll just dive right into it right here. So in the layer stack we have what are called adjustment levels, and adjustment levels will affect everything underneath. However, in this case we just want to affect the one layer underneath. So what we can do to ensure that that happens is right click on the layer pane right here, and we're going to want to create a clipping mask. Now what's going to happen is this level is just affecting the watch and nothing else. Not too much of an issue for this particular situation, but for the future, yeah, that's what we'll want. If we have multiple levels that have transparent areas, you won't want layers under those transparent areas to be showing up with the adjustment affecting them, because you might not create the result that you want. So what we're going to do right here is we're going to adjust the curves on this adjustment level until we have a fairly whited out area. But you can see what's happened because we've used the curves at such an extreme level that we've actually gotten rid of the shadows, which we are trying to maintain, as well as brighten up the watch to a level that kind of looks like it's some fluorescent light in the middle of Las Vegas, which is not really what we want here. So thankfully what we can do with adjustment levels is alter the alpha value, which is the black or white, to determine what percentage of this is applied to the level underneath. So being a completely white layer that affects the whole area, what that basically means is that this adjustment is being applied at 100% to this full canvas. If we were to change this adjustment level to, let's say, gray, making sure that it's selected, now what's happening is this adjustment is being applied at 50% to the entire canvas. If we were to change it completely to black, what would that mean? What that would mean is that 0% of this adjustment is being applied to this canvas. So we'll put it back to full white at 100%, and now we're just going to alter it in certain areas ourselves by using just a black brush at roughly about 40% opacity and flow. And we're going to want to make sure that we have our tablet pressure set to control the size of the brush so we can get a nice organic look here, and we can use the square brackets to change the size of the brush, which is a nice little handy tool if you want to move quick. So then we're just going to subtly paint onto this adjustment level. That's okay if we make mistakes, because we can come back in later and alter various areas of this. Now as you're looking closely, I don't know if you can see it at the bit quality on YouTube, but what you're going to notice is that I'm creating little streaks where the brush paints along. That kind of makes it obvious that I'm painting, you know, unorganically here, and that this isn't actually an original photograph that's been unaltered, which is the impression that we want to create for our users when they look at items on the website. But there's a few ways around this. Similar to how you would use any other tool to alter any other image on any level that you create in Photoshop, you can use tools like the smudge tool here to how would you say, blur together these lines so that they don't look as obvious. And what we can do to achieve this is we're going to go on smudge here and press F5, but because I'm recording something that's not going to work, we're going to have to go in through this manually. We're going to select brush right here out of the window, normally access pressing F5, and we're going to want to make sure all this, actually we can leave that on, we don't want scattering on, I don't even know why that's on to begin with. Shape dynamics we want on. What you see here is nothing more than a quick link to the shape dynamics in the brushes dialog here. Now, spacing is usually on by default, and what that will do, that will pretty much move anything that we try to select, but we don't want to move anything. What we want to do is blur these things together. So by unchecking the spacing, what that's going to allow us to do is mix these lines to create one sort of consistent flow. Alternatively, we could use a single filter and we could just blur the entire thing. But what that's going to do is these edges here that we want to, there, as you can see. Well, actually, you know what? That works quite good. So what we would do is we would use this thing until we sort of get the result that we're looking for. And to tell you the truth, that doesn't look too bad. So alternatively, if you wanted to use it quickly, yes, you could use the Gaussian blur, and that would give you this result. However, what we're going to do here is a manual kind of application. Now, if you wanted to, we could see this channel so we understand, you know, what we've done here. So if we look, that's what we've actually painted in. As you can see, the mask is always displayed in the channel. But we're not going to need to see that. I just showed you for all intensive purposes of learning. So once again, with this level selected, we're going to use a low strength on the smudge tool with the spacing turned off. What we're going to do now is just go over this little doozy right here to get rid of those really hard lines and create a nice, soft, smooth transition. Now the white areas, it's quite obvious what we're affecting, as you can see. So that looks about right. The only thing that worries me is these little light areas right here. If we squint, we can see that there's a really sharp gradient that's transitioning from this sort of light here to this dark. So what we can do to sort of see what we've done, once again, is check our channels and have a look at the mask. Yeah, and if you'll notice, what you can see here is that this area at the bottom is much, much, much darker than this layer at the top. So if we wanted to fix that, we could stay in this panel right here and kind of just even out the darkness. And that will help us get rid of that oh so horrible gradient that's making this watch look like it's dancing in light. Now actually, ideally, this would be the type of situation where you'd want to turn on the spacing, because it'll be easier for us to push. I'll turn the spacing off once again just to even it out. So that's about decent for us to move forward and have a look at it once again. So what we'll do is we'll change our channel back. And now you can see that the watch does look much more even. However, it's still a little bit dodgy up here. So we'll just push this up with the level selected, of course. And that doesn't look half bad. Now, because this is basically like any other level, it's just being treated differently, we could use other effects to slightly alter the amount of darkness. So if we wanted an easy one to do is brightness contrast, and if we turn up the brightness here, what's going to happen is it's going to affect these areas, these light areas, and kind of balance it out a little bit more. You can see what's happened is it's sort of added, it's affected like a certain level of areas right there and sort of turned it up. We could also use levels, of course, and change the amount of darkness that's applied. And what that will do is it'll lighten up the entire level, so to say. So that way we can kind of bring out the color of the watch a little bit, what we want, eliminate the background, and maintain the shadows that we want all in one level, instead of having a number of different adjustment levels. And then once again, we'll just go back into the smudge tool and kind of just clean up these sections right here so we don't get these sharp, bright highlights that makes the watch look like it's not based in reality. And then maybe once more, just to kind of bring those shadows out a little more, I'll go back into the brush tool and paint just some dark right where the shadow will be, making sure that the hardness is turned all the way off and that the brush itself is at a fairly low opacity, so therefore eliminating the need to go back in with the smudge tool and smooth everything out once again.
Ooh, video got refreshed. Ooh, nice looking.
Cool. So maybe one more shot with the smudge tool, not too much. I'll crank the strength of it because all I'm going to do is just come along here. Oh wait, it feels like the spacing is turned on. Nope. Maybe it's just because it's so strong. There we go. So we've used this adjustment level to take this and turn it into this, which doesn't look half bad. And once again, time is always the factor here in determining how much we actually have to spend on a particular piece. If time is a factor, then one could simply just paint black quickly over this in this level and use the Gaussian blur like we had done earlier in this tutorial, but that's pretty much it. Also, you can change the opacity of the level itself to, create that desired result. Maybe you want to fiddle with it a little bit after. Of course, we could even duplicate this layer if we want to. Not an issue. There's lots of different ways to play with this. It's always important to remember that in Photoshop there's about 3 or 4 different ways to do any one thing, and the best course of action will be determined by the image that you are working on. What works extremely well for one might not work that well for another. And that's about it.